us that the priest was delighted to see how healthy she looked and said to Mother, Vidi se da ima Boga, meaning, see, you could see that there is a God. When Luca mentioned Kata, Katie, he remembered when Milia was born, and he went and bought a cow for milk because he thought cow's milk was the best. When Kate was born, the doctor recommended Eagle brand milk be used for her. And he said Kate did so well gaining weight on the canned milk. And Luca, in telling this, laughed aloud with the statement how stupid it was of me to buy a cow. However, he never ventured to sell the cow either. Dear baby Kate contracted measles and became very ill one day. Father Luca said her measles did not come out on her body but stayed inside, which some people often say that happens. But at the time of her illness, Kumakata and Kumilan had some kind of dispute, and she was afraid that Milan was going to beat her. She ran upstairs and took Kate out of her crib to hold and went up to the attic. And Mother, when she came upstairs, saw her holding Kate in her arms before the window. She was looking out to see if Kumilan was coming after her. She thought if she held Kate in her arms, he wouldn't dare strike her. Whether this scene was the result of Kate taking a turn for the worst, we have no way of to find reason there. Kate died on April 3rd, 1927, and Armelia was 10 years old at the time. And she said that Mother and Dad were so heartbroken, I suppose to know how frail she was at birth and to see her gain in strength and weight, and then suddenly she is dead, was hard on both of our parents. It would be for any parent. Luca and Stana chose not to embalm their dead daughter, and the undertaker brought a coffin to the house, and they laid her in it. Amelia said some white fluid like milk would ooze from Kate's mouth, and they would wipe her mouth constantly. Mother kept smothering her with her kisses, and Amelia said she became quite ill after the funeral. Amelia thinks it was because of the fluid or the milk that was oozing from Katie's mouth. Luca told us that Kate and Mike were the only ones of his children that resembled him. I asked Chicha Juro if that was true, and Chicha agreed. He said he was true in saying they looked like him. How we wish there was a picture of them to see. When Coco, was young, I would go to bed at night and imagine God resurrecting everybody in the cemetery. The cemetery is right above our hollow, and I would be outside in the street as they walked past our house, and I would find Kate, and we would be playmates forever. I longed to have a little baby sister. Our brother Gidi was 5.5 years old when Kate died, and he said he thought Kate was going to be buried in our yard when they took her out of the house. At the time Kate died, our Ani was 2 years and 2 months. Amelia said she was always strong-willed. Chicha Bibi must have liked that strong-willed spirit in her, because he loved to see her scoot around the house in what in today's language would be called a stroller, but then was referred to as a kiddie car. Bibi loved when she would come speeding around and pushing herself, and got a kick out of her knowing when to duck her head when she would go under the kitchen table. One day he asked why Anchi wasn't speeding through the rooms in her kiddie car. Mother or Dad told him one wheel broke. Bibi told them in some his favorite Serbian cuss words to get the kiddie car for him. He's going to fix that wheel. Dad said he spent the whole day up in our attic making a new wheel for her car, kiddie car. Mother Stana, however, was not happy having him as a boarder, perhaps because he always drank too much. Uncle Bibi, because of the because of the two of them not getting along too well, left to stay with his other brother Juro in Strina Milca. Janko Sela came to board at our house. Mother didn't mind having Janko. I guess she felt he was her brother-in-law and he was more peaceful than Bibi was. Although Milja, if she were here today, she could tell us more, but apparently everything was peaceful during Janko's stay. For I never heard Mother Stana or Luka say they had a hard time with him. Janko Selak was come to Nikola Galagasia, and when our Katie Janik happened to be visiting, she would see Janko, give Nick a quarter, and she would say to Mother or whoever happened to be close by, I'm his niece, why doesn't he give me quarters? Mother would laugh at how outspoken Katie would be. June 16, 1927, our Strina Milica and Chicha Juro had their fifth daughter. She was named and baptized Anka. Father Luka said Juro had an alternative reason for naming his fifth daughter Anka, which will come up later in this story. Anka was nicknamed Cerna, perhaps because of her dark black hair, and to the English-speaking family she was Tuni. Again, perhaps because the young couldn't say Cerna, and it came out Tuna, and the Tuni followed for another change in the name. Tuni, as we better know her, was never one to be mischievous. As a child, she had a habit of falling asleep at some of the oddest places. One day, everybody went looking for her, and they found her asleep on a wood pile in the back of our house. I don't know what it was about my Chicha Juro's kids, but they all could seemingly fall asleep quickly. While the Drakulic family tree was becoming more full of branches, Ljuban Bibi never wondered, or perhaps couldn't maybe find the right woman to settle down and have a family of his own. After he left Luka and Stana's house, he seemed to lose the humor he had, but he never lost his desire for getting drunk, and that also was a thorn in Chicha Juro's side. Bibi and Mila Vidic were given the two biggest rooms in the house. Originally, their house had only 4 rooms. Their present kitchen and bedroom above their present kitchen and the bedroom above the kitchen was added on after Chicha and Milica moved in. The addition was built by Petar Dobric. He was the noted Serbian carpenter in those days here in the valley. His competition in our area was neighbor George Elstra. Both of them did work for Chicha Juro, and both of them were noted drunks. When Chicha Juro was living with his brother Luka, the two of them paneled the walls of the attic. There were some secret parts in the attic that Luka told he had for hiding his moonshine. One was in the floor of the attic by the chimney. He said the feds never found the spot when they searched our house. The attic also was a dryer for clothes in the winter time. For many years the winters were quite cold back then, and it was then that Luka would buy a lot of fat and melt it down for lard. The rind pieces would be saved and eaten with cornmeal mush, which we called makaron. This tradition was carried on for a long time. One often wonders how longevity reigned in Luka and Juro's veins with all the lard they consumed. Also, this was as traditional in all Serbian homes back then. The Anglo-Saxons made apple cider and we Serbs lard. The attic was where the boogeyman lived, and I, Coco, would never venture alone up there. The furnishings in our house were quite humble, and most of the furniture was bought second-hand. In the room that is our kitchen today, it once was the dining room. Luka bought a large buffet from Nazers, who had a farm up over the hill from our hollow, up in the far left of the hollow. The buffet had a marble slab countertop and 2 shelves on each side with 2-door storage space below. It was a dark-colored wood, perhaps walnut or even maybe mahogany. And in the center of the room, we had a round pedal-leg table. Some of the chairs that went around the table had black leather padded seats. The back of those chairs were shaped like a T, and one wood panel came down in the center, and the others had like thin rods in the back of the seats, and there were no padded seats. Our living room back then was nothing really like a living room. It must not have had much furniture, because when Chicha Juro was recovering from TB, Mother Stana was milking a goat there. Later on, we had a black leather sofa bed with wooden arms, and they were like flat pieces of board actually, and probably one of the boarders, Bibi or Yanko, slept on it. A large cupboard that had been used for a clothes closet was later taken up in the attic, and our brother George tore it apart for wood to make a pair of skis. Who would have thought that our second-hand buffet and table would be a collector's item today? We chopped it up. In our kitchen, we had a coal stove until gas was brought to Valley Avenue. One can imagine what the temperature was back then in the hot summer months when the family meals had to be cooked. The kitchen back then was what it is today. What is today is our dining room. The room had a built-in china cupboard, and along the side of this china cupboard was a long, about two-part cupboard. In the middle there was a drawer. A kitchen sink was at the right side, just as you entered the door from the back. A large square table and some odd chairs made up the furniture. Two windows spaced about 5 feet apart originally were on the north side of the room, and on the east back side of the room, one window was there, and it was close by where the chimney and the stove usually was in that position. There was a porch in the back of the house and one in the front, as we have one in the back and one in the front today. The houses on the Walboro side of Valley Avenue are all quite close to the street. Perhaps with no paved road and with rainfall and snowy winters, it made sense to build close as one can to the road. Tracking in that mud across the yard and into the house would have been probably a problem too. Our brother George had a friend in Jano Tarbuck. Mother said one November, when the weather was quite cool, but not real cold, Gidi was playing outside by the creek in the back. Jano was supposed to have told him to go take off his clothes and go into the creek. The creek was really shallow. When Mother Stana saw him in the creek, she said she gave him a good whipping and scolded Jano for telling him to go into the water. Jano was 2 years older than Gidi, and I guess he was like bossy where Gidi was later. And at that time that this happened, Gidi was said to be only 5. When Luca seen how hard it was for Chicha Juro to walk, he went and bought a car. Bubi was old enough to drive, and also he and Luca, my father, got their driver's license. One day, Luke was driving the car with Stana, Milja, Mitzi, Tarbuck, Gidi, and Gidi inside. They were heading somewhere, perhaps to see Teta Stanica, and Luca lost control of the car right at the coal tipple, which is now part of the Baco bus garage. And they went over the embankment. All of them were lucky, and they weren't hurt real bad. But the wall bus stopped by, and they said they got into the bus and went to the doctor. Milja told this story to us and told how Mitzi always was in the house and always alongside her if they went anywhere in a car. Dad said the car never left the house that one of the Tarbuck kids were not inside. He said he was so frightened that day, especially because Mitzi was with them. The women in the hall were not all that friendly with our mother. In fact, They were more or less enemies, according to our father, either because they were jealous of our family. Dad never was on welfare. We always had enough to eat, and he had a car, so perhaps they were not friendly with Mother for that reason. And there was a lot of tension inside of the house over this. Our parents seemed to be bickering over everything all of a sudden. Our house was a 3-story house, and there was no fancy carpeting. None of the rooms had rugs of any kind. We had wooden floors, not hardwood. And each of the rooms had an iron bed and one dresser. Only one room had a clothes closet, and that was the room in the front, which was, I guess, a master bedroom. But that's where we were all born. In those days, every room had a shelf on the wall, and we used to call those shelves polsas. And under these shelves, sometimes you would find some hooks, and no doubt that's where a coat or two was hung, because there was no closet space in any of the rooms, with the exception of the one master bedroom. Can you imagine building a house today and not having a clothes closet in a room? But apparently the builder of this house didn't have that in mind when he was building or planning this house. Our sister Amelia told us our house always had visitors. She told us about the time Yuba Bielch and Nico were at our house, and Yuba was sitting on a couch with Nico. Apparently the two of them had a spat, and Yuba repeatedly was asking Nico, Nico, da ti mene više nećeš? Listening to the two of them, she ran and told Mother and Dad what she heard, and Mother and Dad started to laugh as she imitated Yuba. Thereafter, anybody who came to our house and knew Yuba and Nico, Mother and Dad told Milja to imitate Yuba for the company. Of course, they would give her money to repeat it, and then one day Yuba and Nico came to the house. They brought Milja a baby doll and told her it was a present for her, and they said she is not to do her imitation anymore. And Milja said she did stop doing that. Sadly, one day, Milja was out in the outhouse, and her doll fell down into the dunk. Milja let out some horrific screams and was sobbing so loud that the neighbors wondered what was going on. Henry Elstrad lived across our house, and his sister came to see what happened, and she was told Milja dropped her doll down into the bottom of the outhouse. God bless the woman. She told Milja not to cry. She would find another doll to give her, and they did. That was Milja's first baby doll that Yuba and Nico gave, and most Serbian kids in the hollow never got toys of any kind, so one can imagine how Milja felt when she dropped the doll down that hole. Outhouses were everywhere in our hollow at one time. There was no indoor plumbing. One oldster in our hollow used to tell us a man would come around and clean out some of the outhouses, and the man was nicknamed the Honey Dipper. There were stories told that all that honey went to Taylor's farm, and the men would laugh and say, "Why do you think Joe Taylor's cornstalks are so big?" How much truth there is to that, no one really knows. Our outhouse had 2 seats. Where people lived in duplexes, the outhouses were duplex too, only they were back to back. Our Chichajuro had 2 boarders and no bathroom. Mila Vidic was said to go to Braddock at a bathhouse on Saturdays, and we were told there was a Carnegie library down there that had a pool, so possibly he may have used some bath facilities that they provided there. Bibi was told he would take a pan of water to his room and bathe. Boarders always